Hello, everyone. Lorena is up, and I'm very excited. She asks many questions. One of them in this specific talks are about silos. Are silos just a way to compartmentalize complexity? A desperate attempt to simplify by lumping together all the similar, but while deeming our differences as negatives rather than positives? Perhaps, but it doesn't have to be this way. Lorena is here to present a few examples from the mobility and healthcare space to illustrate how cross-disciplinary collaboration can be a powerful connector, celebrating how our differences actually makes us richer. Joining us from Toronto, please welcome Lorena.
Thank you. Okay, so can I ask a favor of all of you? Could you please stand and move closer together? You can each gauge more or less how much you have to go to come closer together, and just once you are at the right spot, then you can sit down again. Okay, so this is interesting. I will ask you to look around you and see where there are still some gaps. We're going to talk about discomfort today. I'm going to focus on the people aspect of edgy. Okay, so it wasn't easy for everyone to just get up and move closer, right? And that happens in real life in our organizations, in our projects. So this is just like a very, very small, tiny way to experience that. How willing were you to give up your comfort because you had selected that seat, right, for a reason, and then move closer to be really together? So what do these images have in common? They're all scary situations for me. Okay, I believe that the barrier to change or innovation is not fear, is the inability to manage the emotions behind. So that ability has to do with discomfort management. And just as a side note, there's a really good book called The Beauty of Discomfort by a Canadian journalist called Amanda Lang that I read back in 2017. And since then, it has really influenced the way I work. So today I will be sharing these 3 stories, and I will also be giving you 6 ingredients, if you want to call them that way, that I have personally used in my practice and that have given positive results. So, the disclaimer would be, I do not claim to be an expert. I am only sharing what I have done and lived and saw that worked. If I am preaching to the converted and I'm saying obvious things, then that would make me incredibly happy. Otherwise, please take what's useful to you and generate a ripple effect. So the first picture, his name is Bruno, the one that's playing the keyboards. He's a German student that came to our home this summer. I have an 11-year-old that's called Nico, and he came to give me a hand as an au pair. He's a 16-year-old from Germany, and he loves music. He has a band. I'm divorced, and the first weekend that I did not have my child, I somehow thought, I don't know why, that it would be a great idea to go on a road trip with, a 16-year-old that I had just met, just the 2 of us, right? So after that, I realized, this might be a little bit awkward and uncomfortable. So the first thing I did is I modeled the behavior that I wanted us to have during this trip. We were just going to Ottawa, so it was like 2.5 hours. And while I was in the car, I said, Bruno, I know how to be a mom to an 11-year-old. I also know how to be a friend to adults and to be around them, but I do not know how to be around teenagers. So I'm going to need you to help me navigate this. I'm going to need you to tell me what's okay, what's not okay, what's making you uncomfortable, and what you would really like. Otherwise, this is not going to work. And then I said, and you're going to be the DJ. And that set, the pace for this adventure that we had together. It was a very musical road trip. So by the time we got to to Ottawa, sorry, and we had dinner, I was trying to connect with this kid that did not speak very good English, by the way. And my German is really rusty. And at a certain point, I felt like I was just interrogating him because I was asking questions and he wouldn't know how to answer. And so he would just answer in monosyllable, so like one word. I don't know if it's because he was a teen or because his level of English was not good enough. But the combination of that made a really awkward situation. So I was patient and I got up to go to the bathroom at the restaurant. And when I came back, he very shyly told me, Lorena, look. And he showed me this. And I was incredibly moved. You know, I have the feeling that I always say the wrong thing and then you don't understand me. And that for me was a magical moment. My reaction to that was yes. Yes, and you're not the only one. And I have been there before. And this is so brave. And you're being so vulnerable. And you are acknowledging the discomfort. So this allowed us to connect at a deeper level. And I also used humor, because I don't know if this is a very North American or Latino reference, but it's from Modern Family, Sofia Vergara. And I feel her, you know? And I don't think that this just has to do with, you know, like languages in, you know, like Spanish, German, French, English. It has to also do with languages in different domains. So we often get the feeling that we're not smart because we're not able to express ourselves or because we're not able to understand. But we need to normalize the not knowing. So what happened is when we came back from that trip, I had made a list of tasks that Bruno could help me with. And among those tasks, there was this bookcase, IKEA bookcase, that had been sitting for a year in my living room, like just waiting for alignment, like many of our projects, right? Not procrastination. And so Bruno gathered my friends' kids, and instead of going and playing with them, he told them, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it today. And it was a Monday morning. And they did it in record time, and they did it while laughing and having fun. And also, what's very interesting about this particular situation is these two kids are French and German. So I would speak to them in French. They would speak in German amongst themselves and to Bruno, and Bruno and I would speak English. So it is like a micro, you know, sample of what can happen in organizations and projects. So I came up with a little formula because I know you guys like formulas. So I think that discomfort helped by an empathy boost, which is what happened in that, you know, restaurant in Ottawa, equals trust. And trust leads us to performance within collaboration. And that has a tangible outcome, right? That has impact, that has real impact. So if this worked with a teenager in my living room, you know, imagine what it can do in the real world. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Okay, so I'm going to take you from that living room to the stage in Tokyo. And as I said before, sometimes I don't know why I do things, I just do them. Some might think it's courageous, some might think it's reckless, but I submitted an abstract to go to an engineering, software engineering for intelligent mobility conference in Tokyo to go talk about design and co-creation and diversity and inclusion. And surprise, I was accepted, right? I was the first non-engineer in 20 years to take the stage. And that year, I was the only woman to take the main stage. And I was really scared because the main stage was able to host 360 people. Most of them were men. So I did this. I stepped out of my comfort zone because I wanted to contribute to changing the status quo. And I I traveled halfway around the world to have those 20 minutes, and I prepared. So it's not just about being reckless or being like in places where design is not discussed openly. It's about doing your homework. So I went on Duolingo, and I did 60 days of Duolingo, just enough to say, hi, my name is Lorena, and I'm really happy to be here to break the ice. And then I'm not going to say the room was full because I would just be lying, but there were probably about 150 engineers. I asked them the same thing I asked you. Could you please do me a favor and stand up and come closer together? Because that's what I'm going to be talking about. And I had to wait for about 1 minute because nobody moved. So talk about discomfort. And then, they took pity on me, or they finally understood the message, and they started shifting and shuffling, and they came closer together. And then I started, telling them about this project that I had done for their organization. But within this, there's an aspect of the respect for the culture that I was walking into, the preparation. There was a lot of courage, vulnerability, discomfort, and also there were technical mishaps. Is that how you pronounce it? Anyways, I had to start over not once, not twice, but 3 times. Can you imagine having to stop, go to see the tech guy, come back on stage, and keep on going? And I had to do that, total, it was 4 times. And I cracked a joke the first time. The second time I took a deep breath. Third time, I just pushed through. And it was not perfect, but it was real. It was genuine. And I said, I have 20 minutes. I traveled 10,000 kilometers for this. I am going to do it. Why? Because no one speaks about design in this domain. It was the only conference, the only talk within the conference. And I believe that design should be at the table from the very beginning, not as an afterthought. So this happened in Tokyo. And then I switched from the mobility to the healthcare domain. And I went to a symposium a few months later in Montreal. And I was very patient. For a day and a half, I was soaked in jargon. Most of the time, I didn't understand what those experts and researchers and, physicians were talking about. But I went with it. I was like, I'm here to learn. And by the time there was this panel, I gathered my courage, and I had taken some notes. And I walked up to the mic, and I asked a question, like I did this morning. But the thing is, the host was not our wonderful guru. He turned around and he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "You're right. I'm new here, but I'm not an outsider. I am a newcomer. And I would really like to ask you, where are the patients in all of this?" Because the title, and just going to look at it because it was complex, it was Données de santé, comment concilier innovation, éthique et impact pour les patients. So, there's the word patients in there, but in what they were sharing, they didn't mention patients. So when I asked that question, the man on the right, the older man that is in there, he's the patient partner. And he spoke up. It gave him the courage to speak up and say, actually, I sit in 16 committees of 16 different projects for, patients. And whenever there's these focus groups or testing prototypes, I actually feel that I am the one being tested. My digital literacy is being tested. And the room went silent. And they were like, "Really?" And he was like, "Yeah." And that was a moment where the conversation shifted. And it didn't shift because of me. It shifted because design and human-centered design and user-centric, mindset is important. We need to hear the voices of the people that are getting the most impacted by these solutions that we are working on. Okay? So what is the common thread between these three situations, right? The roadmap, the roadmap, a road trip with a teenager, a main stage in Tokyo, and an expert panel. Yet they're all pointing to the same truth. Discomfort is not the enemy. And if it's paired with empathy, it allows for a better understanding, and then that allows for real connection and effective and productive collaboration. So when we're talking about silos, we're always saying, oh, we need to like take down silos, and we need a lot of diversity, and you know, like put different people together in a room, and that's just going to make things better. I think it's a good starting point, but you also have to be intentional about that. So discomfort is inevitable in diversity. It will happen, but with empathy, it becomes a force for growth and innovation. So I'm going to share with you, you know, I've been working on these sorts of contexts and situations for about 5 years now, and I started noticing patterns, you know, in edgy and intersection. People love patterns, and so I said, I'm going to try and figure out if there are certain elements or a certain journey that people can replicate or include in what they're already doing that would facilitate them fostering diversity, right? So here they are, in a nutshell. It's intentional diversity, asking people to come out of their comfort zone, yes, but into what? You're not just going to leap into the void, right? So you have to create a safe space. And with intentional diversity is really like getting everybody involved from the start. Shifting perspectives. So even here, most of us, English is not our native language. It's not mine, by the way. I'm Mexican, so my native language is Spanish, then English, then French, then German. Clear multidisciplinary communication. So going from confusion to clarity, going the extra mile because we have to if we want for things to actually work. And the impact continuum, right? So what are the tangible outcomes? And I'm going to give you a few examples of this. Just going to check my time. So intentional diversity, what do I mean by this? So with AutoSAR, they said you have 20 stakeholders and you have 1 hour per stakeholder to do interviews for the project that we were working on. And my brother and I, by the way, I had my studio for 6 years with my brother. We went back and we said, no, we're going to take those 20 hours, we're going to take those 20 stakeholders, and we're going to design co-creation workshops. And that's what we did. Online in a platform that's very playful, that's called Butter, that allows for not only emojis, but also sound effects to set the stage. So we did 3 co-creation workshops with engineers, comms, finances, legal, admin, and then we had 1 decision-making workshop, and we replicated that twice for 2 different topics. In Orotte, where I am working at the present time in Montreal within the Jewish General Hospital, it was the same thing, 2 co-creation workshop sessions with physician, nurses, allied health, home care, pharmacy, IT, digital health, and patient partners. And, you know, there's a lot to consider for this to work within logistics. We had to think about who was coming, who actually showed up, to organize the tables so that it would be more or less balanced. And one thing we did is we color-coded the Post-its and the voting dots so there could be some kind of tracking while being anonymous. Because we didn't care who exactly said what, but we did care where that was coming from, right? So it's not the same if it's an IT guy that's saying it than if it's from nursing or if it's from legal or physicians. So from conventional to playful safe space. The word workshop can mean many things for many people, right? So when we first launched the workshops with the German engineers, most people said, we don't have the time, you know, we don't want a workshop. So we had to create an internal campaign to say, hey guys, you know, don't miss your chance to take part in the creative process. And the underlying message was, if you do not participate, you cannot criticize or say anything afterwards. And we did this flyer that went around, the organization, with real testimonials from the first session. So these are real people, like eye-opening. Masahiro is the representative of Japan. Manfred, surprisingly fun, is from BMW in Germany. Very well structured, Klaus from Volkswagen. And one of the best workshops I've been a part of was the finance guy, right? And then we didn't have a problem afterwards in recruiting people to participate. Shifting perspectives. So I believe that speaking in a second language or third language, when we're all doing that while working, is actually an equalizer. So if I were to be speaking Spanish, we would be like this, right? Or if I were speaking Dutch or Swedish or any other language that you guys have as a first language, it would be like this. But we're all leveling up in English. What does that mean? That means that I have the right to not know the words and to say, give me a second to find the right term. I didn't mean that. Can I try again? It got lost in translation. That was one that we used a lot. And in the, hold on, I want to see. Yeah. So normalizing not knowing allows for everyone to contribute with more confidence, right? It is part of creating that safe space. From confusion to clarity. So understanding each other is half the task. I don't know about you, but whenever I get asked, what do you do for a living? And I say I'm a designer, it is somehow never clear. You're laughing, I know you understand me. So information does not equal communication. The number of times an engineer came and dumped information and left because, the message was there, that doesn't work. Same thing for physicians, same thing for designers as well. So if you confuse, you lose, right? And if content is king in what you're trying to convey, clarity is queen. So if there's anything that you take away from today, please take away this. So you need to simplify your vocabulary. I'm going to go through it quicker because I don't have that much time, but this is the mission from AutoSAR. And when we started working with them, the project manager said that it took her 1.5 years to be able to explain to her mother what AutoSAR did. And after our workshops, we were able to simplify it, to rephrase it so that a 10-year-old can understand. So AutoSAR makes cars speak the same language, right? That doesn't change their mission. Their mission is still the same. Their vision is still the same. It just changes the fact that we understand. Because I truly believe we cannot design the right solution for what we do not fully understand. And then from avoiding to embracing discomfort. So going the extra mile, AutoSAR was in 4 different regions in the world and various time zones. That meant we were in Montreal hosting workshops between 2 and 6 in the morning. And we did it several times. Why? Because it was needed, with a lot of coffee, humor, and grace. Because we do believe that you can actually measure the health of a work culture by the amount of laughter that you hear when you walk into an office or when you walk into a space. So that really changed the way we approached our projects. And then lastly, from data collection to tangible outcomes, right? Because you go to a workshop and there's like this bunch of sticky notes and people's ideas. And then, yeah, but so afterwards? So in our case, AutoSAR, it became ultimately a website, but it was also a communications guideline and a wireframe, and not only a website to humanize partnerships, but we also did 3 more projects without additional workshops because we already understood, right? So it's an investment that you do at the beginning. And for Orot, You know, all of these different sticky notes and online workshops and in person, they become a report that then helps create a collective roadmap to attain that. So it's tangible. And that report is shared with all of the participants with transparency. So no data loss, no voices ignored. They're not going to fall through the cracks. Shared accountability and transparency and co-creation is what turns discomfort into impact. So again, 6 ingredients. Please take one or as many as you want and infuse them in your next projects. Because I believe that if you lead with courage and empathy, discomfort will no longer be an obstacle, but an opportunity. So thank you very much.